watch back. And also, there's a lot of content to take in. Blue is going to, I've discovered, blow on my slide. There's been a session before. So we'll have lots of great content to watch back. But welcome. This is the toolkit series, creative toolkit series, and I have to pause on this page. Frank from Aspect isn't here today to explain exactly how this works, but you can register your attendance on this session to earn an Aspect micro credential. So while that's up on screen and you can scan it and find out more in the form, I wanted to bring in Robin, who is my co-curator on these sessions. This is not the first time we've done this, is it, Robin? But it's been evolving. This is the third iteration after the pilot. Robin, can you tell me who you are, what you do, and why we created this toolkit series?
Hello, hi Lucy, hi everybody. The line's a bit jumpy on my side, so sorry if you're hearing me being a bit glitchy. Am I a bit glitchy or am I okay, Blue? Okay. Yeah, so I'm Robin. I work at the University of Bristol. We do quite a lot of support for projects, particularly where they're coming out of research, and we're trying to figure out what the best kind of pathways for impact for them. So I work in the commercialization team, and I also do some support with Aspect as well, trying to figure out across the country what's the best way to support academics, particularly where they're doing kind of commercialization work, but also helping them kind of figure out what might become of their research and their projects as well. So Lucy and I kind of come together and we kind of think, well, what are interesting topics for us to think about, and where do we see projects having sort of challenges? And that's why we kind of come at it and we come up with various different ideas about maybe building websites or apps or things like that. So this stage now, we've kind of got hopefully quite an interesting set of webinars for you, and I think there are, yes, which Lucy has shown now. So some really good stuff kind of coming up. One of our favorites to kind of kick off with, who was with us last time, is Blue to do his session. Lucy, I'll hand back over to you if there's anything else you want to do before.
Well, I've turned my camera off because I'm aware that I'm a bit glitchy. So sorry, everybody. That bit of a tech fail. Gotta love that. It's like old school webinar vibe, isn't it? That my laptop's being a bit grumpy. So hopefully that's better. Is that, yeah, that's all good. Yes, so the way this works today, obviously this is a webinar, but I am going to hand over to Blue shortly, but be keeping an eye on the chat. So if you have a question for Blue, please put it into the chat. That's one of the things I love about doing a webinar, as opposed to obviously being in person is amazing, but ask the question in real time. Blue is perfectly used to me interrupting him, coming in with a comment. Because what I love, even though we've done this session before, things will have changed, and it's going to be interactive as well. Blue will make you do things, so have a tab open on your laptop or whatever screen you're on, so that you can start putting things into the tools like SciSpace and ChatGPT and Gamma that we're going to be using, because this is another good thing about being online, is we're going to have a play while we're actually listening and see what results we get, as I will be too. So Blue, I am going to hand over to you, and we can crack on with the session. AI tools makes it sound very vague. We have got a couple of AI sessions in this season because it's just a topic that keeps expanding, and we've got a lot of questions about not only how to use it, but the best practice and evolution of tools. So if you have any questions around how you should use it as an institution, that's not really for this session. I would go back into your institution to ask that question, or some of those Robin may be able to answer as well. Blue, over to you. And you're on mute. Oh, we're doing well today, aren't we?
We are. It's all
it's the
all
first one
uphill
back.
from here.
We're a bit rusty, aren't we?
Hopefully my screen is showing and we
It
can
is indeed. Yeah.
move forward from tech stresses. Okay, yeah, so today we're going to run through a session on how to leverage different tools, particularly generative AI. I will explain what that means if you're unfamiliar with that term, in higher education institutions. Before we get into the details, so we'll go through some fundamentals just so that we all have a baseline understanding of some of the words that I will use, the applications and its potential, including some of the risks. Like Lucy said, we won't be going into detail on some of the more pension topics, energy use, ethics. As much as I enjoy those subjects, unfortunately 90 minutes and this space isn't the time. But there are other spaces to have those debates. We're going to be looking at more practical knowledge. So how can we use generative AI tools in research, whether that's research synthesis or coming up with ideas to generate impact from research, how to create and semi-automate presentations, and then we're also going to look at bid writing. So 3 tangible examples, but do also come in with questions and ideas. And if there's something that you really want to ask that I don't cover, we will have some time at the end for that as well. We're going to look at a really fundamental element of generative AI, which is creating effective prompts. Prompts is just a fancy way of saying questions, and we'll be giving you the prep framework for doing that. So every time you write a prompt, whether or not you're using ChatGPT or Cloud or Gemini, you've got a solid framework to get the best output from these large language models. And then housekeeping, like I said, questions are welcomed in the chat. You can come off. I don't think you're able to come off mute in this session, actually. And we have a car park for those out of scope topics. So, but who am I and why am I here running a session on artificial intelligence? So I'm currently employed by the London School of Economics. I'm a social venture manager on a pan UK university project called Impact U. Impact U gets funding and training to social ventures that are started by academics, students and alumni. Also entrepreneur in residence at the University of Bristol, working really closely with Robin and Lorraine at the university, supporting academics from shape disciplines to commercialize and grow their ventures. More recently, became a co-founder at Diversity X. So we're all about getting capital and training into underestimated founders. I'm also director at Talk Club, which is a charity based in Bristol, and a couple of other things around the sides. And to get things moving, we only have 90 minutes, so this will be done at a pace. Like Lucy said, there will be exercises, so please do this with me as we move along. If it's too fast, you can always rewatch the recording and do it at your own pace, but I would encourage you to at least try. You can't get this wrong in this space. There's no judgment and there's no expectations on what the outputs look like. So for the very, very first exercise, we are going to go to one of my favorite platforms that I use weekly, and it's called SciSpace. So we are going to go to typeset.io. That is the URL. And Robin, let me know if this doesn't work as I move to a new screen to put this in, because sometimes
I'm doing it too. I like this. I like the fact you make us do work, Blue.
yeah, sorry about that. So
no, you're not. It's good.
You can either go to typeset.io or
Yep.
scispace.com. It looks like they've got an updated URL with a redirect.
They do this every time. It changes. That's what I said. Every time we do this, it feels like there's been an evolution.
Yeah, these things do move fast.
Yeah.
It's even this landing page is different now.
Yep.
So we are going to go in the old school way.
It looks more like ChatGPT, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? I think we're seeing that across a number of solutions as well, where they're all starting to mirror that type of interface.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're going to go to new chat, which if you're not on this homepage will bring you here. I am then going to ask it a question related to current or future research or any particular question that might relate to a subject matter or a theme that I'm particularly interested in. So for me, at the moment, I'm fascinated in what is called the impact economy. So I'm going to ask, what are the market signals for the impact economy across the globe? You may want to ask a question related to your own research or some research that you're thinking of starting, and what this tool does and how it's very different to something like ChatGPT or cloud is that it's trained on academic research. So it's a partnership across the globe from various universities and journals, and they have created a data set based on research papers. So rather than the wild, wild west of the internet, like ChatGPT, this is at a different level of integrity. So when we ask it a question, oh, and I need to quickly sign in. It's using a much more rigorous data set to give us an answer. So it's going away, it's looking at all these research reports, and it's asking the question.
And this is on the free, you can do this for free as well, which I think is quite important. I think they all have a paid version, don't they? But
so it's then answering my question. And as you can see, it's referencing and sourcing various different articles from various different journals. If I want to go into a particular journal, I'm able to do that. Sorry, into a particular research paper, I'm able to do that. I can open it as a PDF and ask it questions. There's various different types of ways that I can interact. And it's also, this is where the tool's moved on since even I've last used it. It's telling me the amount of papers that it's found, some of the sources of those papers, and now it's extracting the insights from that almost meta-analysis of research papers. And while it's doing that, I can look at the sources. So if I scroll all the way down, I should probably get to around 100. If I want to go into a particular paper, I can listen to it as a podcast, I can see it as a PDF, I can ask it questions, can show me the conclusions from this particular paper, and I can do a more micro level dive into this, or I can come back to my original question and look at a more general answer, which it's still getting the answer to for me. And there we go. It's definitely got a lot more comprehensive even since the last time that I've used it, which is great. So what we'll do is we'll let that run in the background and it's doing its thing. Has anyone managed to come up with a question? Are they seeing what I'm seeing? Are there any challenges? Has anyone actually got an answer to their question yet? If you could pop that in the chat, that'd be great. And as it says on the left, my little agent screen is telling me that it's now creating a comprehensive report. So it's doing that meta-analysis and creating a single report based on 78 papers, and it will reference those where applicable within that document, which is quite a powerful tool in my opinion. Yep, still extracting insights from Lorraine, references for Adrian at the moment. It's good for academic research, but miss very important information, NGO reports and non-academic. Yeah, good point.
I think with any tool, it is a tool. It isn't going to, it's like anything you're going to talk about today. It won't give you everything you need, but it will definitely move you forward.
Yeah, and if you're looking for something maybe a little bit wider and less focused on academic papers, and this is where doing this real time is even better, we could go to something like Perplexity. So www.perplexity.ai, we could ask the same question. One, we'll get a quicker response, and two, this isn't just trained on academic research. So as you can see, it's looking at IMF, OECD, WEF, and it's given us a much quicker answer. So with a lot of these tools, I would always use 2 or 3 so that then you're triangulating the data, and in theory that should give you a greater level of integrity. I don't think that's a given, but you're definitely increasing your chances.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Robin. My query found 220 papers. Yeah, SciSpace has become a lot more comprehensive than when it first was on the market. So whether or not we're seeing that happen in the marketplace across LLMs, we're having these ones that are at a much more reputable level, and then the ones like ChatGPT, which are quicker, but also bring the risks of hallucinations and errors. So yeah, Perplexity is another one. So we're looking at, they've given me a summary of global market signals, diversification, shift to measuring impact, economic conditions, etc., etc. I may even use something like that then to use with SciSpace and dig into one particular element of this that I'm finding fascinating. So you can use these systems interchangeably.
So if I've got a project, do you think it's a good idea to use this to maybe review who else is working on a similar question to my project, or kind of, I was thinking about how we'd approach this. If I was running a certain engagement, I think I'd probably want to know who else was doing it, or whether there was any academic research relating to the impact potentially of what I was doing.
Yeah, I think there's, for me, yeah, I would definitely use it that way. If we were producing or think about starting a new piece of research, or for example, exploring a PhD, I might use this as a really good start to analyze the current literature out there and start to think about where the gaps might be for my own research.
Yep. And it could be an opportunity for collaboration, couldn't it? You might find out somebody in the region has done something very similar to what you're thinking about. I think it's a good door opener. I think that's how I see these tools. It's a good door opener, a good context giver in terms of what we're looking at with the creative tools.
Yeah, I agree. And it's all about, and I'm sure we're in the right setting for this, but what's often missed is that you still need that critical lens. I think universities are one of the best places for that type of mindset. But we still need to be able to bring that, okay, what are the weaknesses with this output? What are the strengths? Where are the gaps? What else might I be able to do to ensure that I'm getting the best possible information or answer that I need to my question or my piece of research?
Yep.
Brilliant. I'm just going to double check the other element of so what they've also added is little mini prompts. So these are quite new: finding grants, analyzing data, review literature, and it starts to create a template prompt for you. That will become more relevant as we work through the session. So if
And
you
I
do
get
want
that
to,
that's going to be based on what most people have done, I guess, isn't it? So it's going to be user.
yeah, it wouldn't be surprised me if they analyze the way that every single user uses their website, and then they're building these on top of it, which is quite a clever way to do that.
That's interesting, though, as you say, the PowerPoint presentations and the way they're putting all the tools together. Really interesting.
Yeah, and on the left-hand side, so this is probably the one I use the most. This is what I was looking for. So literature review. So I'll just use one of the questions that they're prompting me. Let's have a look at how does climate change impact biodiversity. So for those of you that might not have seen that, on the left-hand ribbon, there's a little magnifying glass that says literature review. I've asked it a question: how does climate change impact biodiversity? And it's giving me a much quicker answer this time based on the top 5 papers. I can read that answer. Climate change significantly impacts biodiversity by altering ecosystems, etc., etc. I can double click on any particular paper that I'm interested in. I can also add a filter so that when it answers the question, it only looks at top papers. So I can click on top papers and it will answer that question again for me using the top journals associated with that topic. And now it's going to re-answer the question for me. I'm not going to go for that verbatim. As I scroll down, I'm then being shown the research data set that answer has been populated from. Again, it won't be perfect, but at least we've got an extra level of information on what journal it's coming from, what academic wrote the research paper, And picking up on Lucy's point about potential collaborations, this is where you might be able to see some other researchers across the globe that are in a similar domain to yourself, and it may make that process quicker and easier.
We've got some questions around the important features of paid versus unpaid SciSpace. It looks like you have a limited amount of search on the unpaid, as it said on you can only ask it a couple of questions. So it looks like the paid just allows you to continue querying and building up those solution maps as it suggested.
Yeah, it'll be very similar to most of the other large language models where there's always a free offer, but for that extra level of integrity and also security, which we'll touch on later as well, you can pay for it. This particular function, the literature review, you do get quite a lot of credits with this. I'm yet to overrun my credit usage on this particular element on a free pass. I've actually never paid for SciSpace, but there are other tools that I will mention today that I do pay for. Mm-hmm. However, for your particular type of work, it might be worth the investment. I would recommend always playing around with the free one until you feel like it's demonstrating enough value to cover what is normally quite a very low monthly cost anyway.
But you've got to reach a tipping point. I totally agree. There's a couple of questions in here from Cherry around whether it works with the abstracts, the whole document, but also can you ask it to look at only information in the last 5 years? I think you can, can't you? I think you can set parameters.
You can set parameters within the prompt. And I believe you can set parameters within. So if we wanted to just look at those papers that it's building from, we can set them into a timeline view. We can play around with the quality of the answer. So this normally relates to how long the agent will go and scan the large language model. Again, these will cost more tokens, so you're more likely to move into the terrain of having to pay for this. So let's have a quick look. So these particular research papers are all 2025, 24. So these ones are only in the last 2 years, but you can load more papers and you can go further and further.
That's perfect. That's chronological.
Into the rabbit hole, depending on your need at that particular time.
We should say that at the beginning of this session, shouldn't we? We're going to introduce you to some rabbit holes. We're very sorry.
Yeah. But just to reiterate, this particular tool, if it is your first time using it, I would concentrate on the literature review function. Everything else has been added since its core offer, which is literature review. Even this home screen is now working at a much different level and more like the paid version of ChatGPT. So as soon as you come to this home screen, just pop straight into literature review. Much better place to start in terms of price, time, and skill level.
Cool.
So that is SciSpace. And one thing that is constant throughout all of these exercises, it's all about reiterating, experimenting. So getting better with the way that you ask questions, the different functions within these tools. Nothing will be perfect. I learn something every time I use these tools, and they are moving at such a pace that there is this continuous learning that's almost needed when you act and use these tools. So we're just going to take a quick rewind or a step back and just go through some quick fundamentals on AI. Pardon if you already know this, but I just want to make sure that if there is someone in the room that doesn't understand some of the words, that we are all operating from a similar foundation level. So what is artificial intelligence? Basically, it's the way that AI helps computers think and learn like us. So the difference is that they're rapidly processing huge volumes of data, almost incomprehensible to us. And some of the key concepts that you might hear me say or mentioned on the news or in the public domain is machine learning. And that's just systems learning from data, same as the way that humans learn from data, machines learn from data, but on a much more hyper speed and hyper scale. LLM, you may have heard this term, that just stands for large language model. And this is a type of AI that's trained on large data sets, and it can understand and generate human language outputs. So when we talk about LLMs, we're talking about ChatGPT, Gemini, SciSpace, and those more general AI generative tools that we use. On that note, what does generative AI mean? It just means that it's a tool that's able to create something. They're often text, images, music, video, and even films now. Popular AI tools on the market would include some of those that I've already mentioned. You may also be familiar with Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini. We had a quick look at Perplexity. We'll look at Gamma today, Claude, Runway. There's hundreds coming on the market every month. But what I want to reiterate is that we don't actually have to understand all this word and technology. We don't actually, most of us don't know how our mobile phones work, and yet we use them and leverage them every day. However, if you do want to learn them, there's copious amounts of YouTube videos and resources, and also paid training to get into the finer details of how things like neural networks work and how actual machines do learn. But we don't need to do that to just utilize its value. Depends on your own level of curiosity. And some of the potential benefits that these tools can bring to us include improved efficiency, improved decision making, increased creativity. They can analyze huge data sets in just a few seconds. There's a cost reduction opportunity, and there's a resource bridge, especially when we look at businesses or operations where resource might be tight. And just a case study that brings this back to earth a little bit. There was a linguistics department at European University that's been creating instructional videos in multiple languages to support global learnings. So there are some quite incredible generative AI tools that are, some instantaneously can translate language. So if I was delivering this workshop now, you would get an instantaneous language translation. This particular university is using that to create more assets from one type of learning video, which is really cool. And as you can imagine, that's going to save time, costs, and cognitive load. Brill, I will take a pause there for any questions. For those of you that have mentioned the coffee break, I've had a coffee break. Just go into the literature review tab with the magnifying glass instead. It's just a less intense, token heavy function within SciSpace. Brill. Cool. So we've got a few of the basics. Let's look at how this translates to higher educational institutions.
We've got a quick question below about what was the translation tool you mentioned?
Oh, there's lots on the market. I can, again, because I haven't looked at this for a while and the market moves fast, I can do a quick dive after this session and send it through to you to share with everyone.
Cool, thank you.
And if you are, if you're not that patient and you want to know the answer, just Google, there's an AI tool for that. And that's a search engine that you can use to just find the AI tool for a particular need. We can do that live, actually. Why don't we do it live? There's an AI tool for that. And then we'll go and find the website. There's an AI tool for that.com. And let's say video language translation. I don't know how good this will be, but let's give it a go. And it's going to scan CAM, AI voice translation and dubbing for videos in 100+ languages. I would probably then go and have a look at that, see what it's like. This one's more captions, break language barriers with real-time AI translation. That's quite useful. So just scanning those three, I'd probably start with something like CAM and then just go and have a play and see how good it is. But this is a really good website in itself, actually, to just be able to search search pretty much all the AI tools across the globe that might relate to a particular use that you have in that moment.
Yeah, that's really handy. And also it had reviews, didn't it? It had feedback on those, what people think, of these tools. So really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I often come in here if I want to maybe pop onto trending and see what types of tools people are using and see if there's anything I can add to my own toolbox.
Nice.
So back to higher education. So we touched on a few of these. The bit that I'm particularly passionate about is where we can automate or semi-automate repetitive, high waste or low value tasks so that people like you can concentrate on what you're great at and your more high value tasks. Fortunately, our jobs are still littered with admin and low value tasks. AI has the potential to take quite a lot of that away from us. It can support resourcing and funding gaps, especially if you start to get into the realm of creating agents, so particular generative AI tools that do particular jobs, and we'll touch on that today. Can reduce overworking and burnout. I've used this quite certain things in the social enterprise and charity sector where resources can be tight, and we might create a bid writing assistant to help the only bid writer in that organization to be able to apply for more grants, find more grants, and also train this particular tool on their own style of grant writing as well. And we'll touch on that a little bit later. But I think we'd be naive, and I'm sure you're all aware of the myriad of challenges associated with AI. It does have the potential to exacerbate inequality, things like widening the digital divide. Most of these large language models are based on the language of England or English, sorry. They're also based on a data set that's predominantly Western. So that in itself has the potential. And again, we'd probably be naive to say that it's not already creating and exacerbating certain elements of inequality. On that note, it can also perpetuate a lack of diversity because of that data bias. And I'm sure you've all seen things in the press around where you ask certain large language models questions and they will answer based on a stereotype or misinformation. And this is where the critical mindset becomes even more important. Energy and water consumption, I'm yet to see, and if anyone has, I'm yet to see a rigorous evaluation of the environmental impacts of large language models. I've not seen anyone really do the counterfactual, but there have been quite sensationalized headlines about how much energy a single prompt uses. I would take those with a pinch of salt until we get some more reputable research that comes out around the impacts of a prompt, because they don't often take in consideration how much extra work you might have to do to get the same answer. Okay, are you using Google? If we're going to have a control group, or are they using a library, etc., etc. It's a very hard analysis to do, but I'm sure there are people working on it. There's other ethical and data considerations, IP, plagiarism. I would always be mindful of what information I put into a large language model. One of the ways to mitigate some of that risk is to pay for the subscription. That gives you an extra level of privacy. Or if your higher educational institution already has a license with Microsoft and you're using something like Copilot, which sits within your own organization's infrastructure, you're a lot safer.
Does that address Cherry's question about a recommended tool that takes transcripts of meetings that are confidential? So if you're using Copilot and it's your institutional Copilot, does that mean the data stays within your institution?
Yeah, I would always use what's native to your organization. The moment you start to use external tools is the moment where you're opening up an element of risk. That doesn't mean don't do it, but if there's already a tool that your organization uses, that's going to be your first and safest avenue to move. If you are unsure, always speak to your data team or your tech team or your security team, whatever that looks like in your university, and they'll have a process for reviewing different types of tools. Most, if they're any good, will fall in line with GDPR and other regulations, but I'm not a specialist in that area, and I would always recommend going to speak to someone within your organization on that. So for example, at the London School of Economics, we now have Copilot across all of our university, and that allows us to do the meeting transcripts. It also allows us to interact with different files through the Copilot agent, and it just makes life a lot easier. If you do start to use external tools, just make sure any information is not personalized, it's anonymous, and that you're not putting any secure data into those large language models. Amazing. So some quick fire examples. So the way that these tools can be used in higher education can generate literature reviews quite quickly. We just saw that with the literature review function in SciSpace, but we have other tools that can do that as well. Transcribing interviews or coding thematic data, semi-automation of research grants. If you've been writing research grants for the last 5-10 years, you've already got quite a rigorous data set to be able to train an agent or a custom GPT. Those terms are used interchangeably on everything that you've learned, and it would answer questions based on the way that you've answered questions over the last 10 years. The risk with using these tools for bid writing or grant applications is that people often use them out of the box without doing any type of prompt engineering or training. I'm going to show you how to mitigate against that as we move through today's session. Create presentations, and as I've indicated a few times, these tools become a lot more valuable and unique when you use your own data. However, the caveat is that that's got to be used safely. Brilliant. So let's go to our first proper exercise for this workshop. So we are going to generate some ideas for creating impact. So we are going to head to ChatGPT. If you've never been there, it's now chatgpt.com. And you can use the free version for this. So head to chatgpt.com. And we are going to ask ChatGPT to summarize some research, whether or not it's our own, or for this, I'll just use an example. I will copy and paste this prompt.
And I'm going to ask the audience, how much has everybody used ChatGPT, or do you use Copilot at work? Are you using these tools daily, or is it something that you're a little bit daunted by, hence why you're here today? Because I have to admit, I use Chat probably daily. University of Bath, I do use Copilot because that's the tool we have internally.
Few people daily and weekly.
Yep. Adrian, that's absolutely fine. It's not a test. You're all good. Because I think some people are still a little bit like, I don't quite know what to do with it or what to ask it or how to make the most of it. Obviously, that's why you're here. And I think even as someone who uses it really regularly, I still get a lot of value out of reviewing my best practice. Sorry, Blue. I just see how we're going, because I still think because they're evolving so hugely, I think how you use it is still good, because you get into bad habits, don't you? It's just good to make sure that we are all these are only as good as your prompt.
Agree. Yeah, and that'll be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, takeaway from today. So what I'm doing right now is I've just popped back into SciSpace because I'm just going to grab a research paper for this next exercise. So I'm interested in the impacts of reading. So I'm going to ask a question around what are the effects of early childhood reading from the ages of 0 to 3 years on literacy. Again, I'm using literature review in SciSpace. It's answering my question based on top 5 papers. I'm just going to go and grab one of those papers for this next exercise. It doesn't really matter which one, it's just the sake of showing you how this works. I'm going to find where I can download the PDF. Sod's Law. Sometimes the PDFs are behind a paywall, sometimes they are not. Cool. What I'm going to do is, rather than, so you've got two options. You could put your research paper in, or a bit of research you're reading, or you can reference it. I'm going to reference it for now just for speed, but ideally I would have the PDF copy of this, or it would be my own. So please, can you summarize this research on, and a one-page executive summary that distills the information into its most important elements, points, and key findings. So it's going to go away and do that for me. Looks like it's already found the bit of research. Ideally, again, you would have the PDF. And it's giving me a summary of the research, key findings. Reading aloud to children during the early years shows positive effects on preschool, children's measured language ability, etc., etc. Reading behavior in the long term, school marks. Brilliant. Let me know if people have been able to do that with a bit of research that maybe they're interested in, or maybe they've even completed themselves, and critique the output, and let me know how you've got on with that. And if that's gone okay for you, the next part of this exercise would be to then take the next prompt, which I will copy and paste in the chat. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT to suggest specific and actionable ways to maximize the societal, cultural, and economic impact of this research, focusing on policy influence, public engagement, knowledge exchange, industry partnerships, and social venture creation. I'm then asking it to target key groups and stakeholders, propose cost recovery approaches for a level of financial sustainability. So I will copy and paste that in the chat so you don't have to type all that out. And what we're essentially looking at is getting ChatGPT to ideate for us. So I'm going to go back to the original chat where I just asked it to synthesize the research. I'm going to ask it that second prompt about, okay, what impact could I create from this research? And almost instantaneously, it's starting to answer that prompt, putting it in a nice readable format. Primary beneficiaries of this type of research could be parents and caregivers, particularly in low literacy or socioeconomically disadvantaged households, early years educators, libraries, etc. Secondary beneficiaries, publishers, edtech startups, etc. And this is all starting to get my brain thinking about, if this was my particular piece of research, where I might want to go with it next. I could look at local and government partnerships, piloting family reading interventions. I could look at public health teams, tech and media partners. I might be particularly interested in this element, so collaborating with audiobook or educational app providers. I've also asked about, gone.
We have a really good point from Cherry. How do we know it's real in ChatGPT? And you mentioned hallucinations. And I think it's really good to do these with that in mind. You've got to go and check your sources. I've run transcripts of videos through chat and it's put some amazing quotes in. And I've gone, well, can you give me the timestamp on that quote? And it'll say, oh, no, I've just created a quote along the lines of what I thought you wanted to have. Yeah. So I think that's a really good point, is check all the sources. It is a tool to start. So whenever I use it to create content, you know, it still ends up with you for the quality check, for the data review. And also I've done things like cut and paste an article rather than give it the URL. There's some oh, we've attached a document, that's fine. But sometimes you put a URL in, it will explore beyond that, and also being very tight and definitive with the questioning around the accuracy of the data. But I mean, Cherry, your key point is assume it's not perfect.
Yeah, and like you said, Lucy, there are ways to mitigate that. One is, if we're asking questions that are integral to our work, then using tools like SciSpace that are built on academic papers is one way of mitigating that. The other element is, with papers you've already read. Yeah, really good point. So what I would expect here is that someone would have already a good understanding of this subject matter and research paper, so that you're also able to critique the output. What we're demonstrating here is that ChatGPT can augment and speed up your way of working, especially if we're looking to translate your research or someone's research into impact.
I really like the analogy of using these tools like you've got an intern. You're saying to the intern, can you go and gather loads of data for me? You would not take the intern's work and present it as your own.
Correct.
You would review it, you would double check the sources, but it just moves you forward. And if you see it like that, then it suddenly becomes a very different resource. It is not your social media manager or your project manager or your research manager. It's an intern. It's a keen, but not incredibly well trained, as in it just wants to go and it wants to make you happy. That's the other point, isn't it, with AI? It wants to make you happy and it wants to answer all your questions, and sometimes it does that. Well, that's true. I don't know, Cherry. I mean, I'm thinking they might go and get all the data without really having all the context because they don't really know what you mean. And I think chat is very similar, or the other these tools.
Yeah, I think these tools are getting more powerful every time a new model is released. Hallucinations have become less and less. Again, especially if I have the paid version for ChatGPT, so I get to use the latest model, and there's something called deep thinking in that, which is a lot more robust. However, anything that comes out of it that I use as a bit of a litmus test, if I'm making a major decision, or it's influencing maybe a business or a charity or a social enterprise, I really need to check the integrity of the answer. Or if it's something that makes me particularly emotive, like a news story, I need to be checking the integrity. And I think that is going to become just a general way of life for most people as this information bleeds into daily life. I also think this is where the opportunity lies. If you know a subject matter quite well, you can then use these tools with a better sense of their strengths and weaknesses. Whereas if let's think about my first career, which was aerospace, if I was using these tools as an 18-year-old person that's just started in aerospace engineering, I'm going to be less able to critique what comes out because I have less knowledge myself, if that makes sense. Cool. And so let's have a look more, and with that critical lens, some of the cost recovery ideas that ChatGPT is suggesting: charging for short accredited courses or workshops to teachers, childcare workers, digital toolkit subscriptions, consultancy and impact measurement, a social venture spin-out. One of my favorites: establish a not-for-profit entity delivering parent-child reading interventions based on that research, or a grant to fee transition model. And as we scroll down, ChatGPT's done a pretty good job at answering the prompt that I've put in front of it. It's also talking about the accessibility and public engagement piece of translating research. And it's giving me, I wouldn't say it's the definitive answer, but it's starting to allow a level of ideation. And I use these tools often if I'm working on my own and I've not got someone to bounce an idea off. This can open up novel and innovations and different ways of thinking. And as it goes on, it's now going into policy and professional practice as well. Did anyone try that? Please share your critiques of the output if you're comfortable. And as you're thinking about that, just to make this a little less, make it a little bit more tangible, I've been working with an academic at UCL that specializes in early childhood development and literacy. And we've been going through this process ourselves around how do we translate some of his research, which is world class, around literacy attainment in the ages between 0 and 3, and how might we be able to translate that into a real world product to be able to be used by parents of young children. So, and we've been using various AI tools like this to support our own ideation, problem exploring, and solution testing. So this isn't just abstract, it can be used in real life. Brill. Please let me know how you got on with that. And then the next level of this prompt, and we're still questioning in the same line of thought, I'm going to go a step deeper. I'm going to ask ChatGPT to take one of the suggestions. I'm going to go with the social venture because that's something I'm passionate about. And I'm going to ask it to start to put together some text for a funding pitch. So I'm going back to my original chat. I'm going to ask ChatGPT to take the social venture spin-out idea. So take the social venture spin-out idea. Could you take this idea and create a text output for a funding pitch based on the best practice approach to pitching for, let's go, pre-seed investment. And I'll pop that in the chat if there's just anyone that wants to just copy and paste, save you time. And the output is framing the answer in what looks like so far the best practice approach to a pre-seed investment pitch. It's also referencing some of the big funders, Nesta, Unlimited, Impact VC, which is great. It's giving me more information than I asked for, but that would be useful. It's framing the problem. 1 in 4 children. I know this is true as well because I've read the national literacy research. 1 in 4 children start school without the language or literacy foundation they need to succeed. This gap continues to grow as they age. So it's framing the problem. And it's starting to, I wouldn't take this verbatim, but it's starting to draft out the solution. Would I do parent coaching? Me, potentially not. There's probably actors out there that already do that well. However, I would be particularly interested in digital storytelling. And this is an avenue we are exploring where we're trying to create a digital and physical solution to story reading for parents. So taking the best from the digital world, but also building on Professor Dominic Wise's research on the benefits of physical books, which is a no-brainer for some, but you'd be surprised at how little is known about that in the public domain. And it's telling me about community partnerships. I'm not going to go through this verbatim. Again, it's suggesting a business model. It's summarizing the market opportunity. Here, I would probably want to go and do some further research to figure out market size, etc., etc. It's even framing an ask. Again, I wouldn't take that verbatim. Maybe my ask would be 250,000. But you can see how you can get something on the board quite quickly for you to then refine, stress test, critique, rather than maybe starting from a blank page and really struggling to go, how do I turn my research into an impactful venture, if that's something you aspire to do. Brill. Any questions? Please feel free to jump in. Anything coming up for you, Lucy?
No, all good. I do like how it adds extra value actually in that scenario around the funders and the structure of a pitch, which I know a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, and on that note, actually, if pitching is something that you're often doing, and that's particularly around investment, there's another great tool that's just been released by one of the biggest impact VCs in the UK. I'll just grab that. It's called Deck Genius. So it's built by a reputable impact VC called Ada Ventures, and you can just drop in your pitching deck. So I'm just going to drop in my one for our reading solution, and it analyzes your deck based on the fact that you were pitching to them for an equity investment, which is great. We'll let that run in the background and we'll come back to that one later, but I can share that link as well. If angel or equity investment is part of the way that you want to translate your research into impact, this is an amazing tool and can save quite a lot of time and errors and improvements when you do eventually go out to pitch.
I'm definitely going to have a look at that afterwards.
Yeah, and it's
Really
built by
good.
Ada Ventures, so there are other tools out there, but I
Yeah.
think because there are so many, you have to be selective with, okay, who's built it, what's their knowledge.
They're a company we know, so I think you're right. It's somebody would be good to get involved with. Thank you.
No worries. Cool. So moving on and picking up the topic of presentations and pitches, I think at some point in our lives, we all have to present something and try to get someone to make a decision, whether or not that's research funding, venture investment, or something just like a change within our organization. Gamma is one of my favorite tools. I pay for this. This presentation is built in it, and it's a generative AI tool that helps you to create presentations. You can create them from scratch. You can create them from a document that you already have, like a research paper or any other type of asset. So I will show you, and if you are comfortable, please do this as we go through it on the screen. So the website is gamma.app. For the sake of this exercise, we are going to just create a new one. As we select create, we're given a few options. We can paste in text, we can generate a presentation from one line, or we can import a file. You can also remix a template, but we will ignore that for now. As you can imagine, pasting in text is going to probably have more, it's going to be more reputable than just adding a one-line prompt, and better again, importing a file that we've already created is going to give us a better steer. However, we're just going to go with the one-line prompt just to show you how good Gamma can be. I often, let's say, from today's presentation that I'm giving this workshop, let's say I wanted to create a really short 1-page or 5-page summary of what we did. I might import this workshop. I could even link it to a video of this workshop. The asset really doesn't matter, but the more I give it, the better the output will be. It's a bit like if I was to ask you to do a task and I said, Lucy, please can you put me a presentation on how to build an audiobook for children? You might go away and come up with all sorts of answers. If I said, please can you go away and figure out how to create an audiobook for a child that's 1 year old, that speaks English, that etc., etc., the more variables I give you, the better the answer will be. So for this particular example, we're going to start big though, just to show you how good it is. And I'm going to ask it to create a presentation on the subject of literacy. So can you summarize the benefits of reading to children from the age of 0 to 3? If I had my own research on this subject, I might attach that. Again, the level of integrity of the output goes up if I give it that type of data. I can select the output that I want: presentation, web page, document, social post, how many slides, they use the word cards, the size, the language. For now, we're going to go presentation, and let's just go for 6 slides. And then click generate outline, and it's going to start the first level of generation. And I could do a quick check of that. If I was spending more time on that, I could edit some of these to give the tool a bit more direction. As I scroll down, I get more options. how much text do I want per card? Let's go concise. I can pick the theme. I have the paid version, so I'm able to add logos, but for now we will just use a generic one. And the other option I get is I can select if I'm using stock photos, AI generated images, illustrations. AI images can be hit and miss, but they are getting much, much better. We will use that just to show the limitations. I can select the model. So the model that these images are generated from, I'm going to use Imagen, which is made by Google, and then I can select the art style. I'm going to go with something really simple, line art, and then I'm going to press generate. And we're going to let Gamma do its thing, and hopefully it all works. And then before our eyes, we get a pretty strong starting point for a presentation on the subject matter that maybe I'm doing a talk about, or maybe I just want to learn about.
And Cherry's asked about doing that again more slowly. I would say open up Gamma and have a play, and maybe have the recording of this running next to you, because it's very intuitive. And yeah, have a go yourself and work it through. But yeah, we will send you the recording of this as well. Yeah.
Yeah, conscious
also,
that it does run
Gamma
a bit
has
fast.
training as well, doesn't it? So you can work. Gamma will talk you through.
Yeah, they've got an agent function now as well. They've got training materials. So I get my draft. I don't particularly like the themes, so I might change the color. Let's go with something a bit more simple. I don't really like the images. I can double click on the images. I can use stock images instead of AI images. So at least I know these people are real, even though it's hard to tell these days. And maybe I'll go with something like that. That's a bit more tasteful. I can do text editing like I'm working in PowerPoint. The way that I use this most effectively is to say, so for example, if I've done a big piece of informal research, let's say on like a meta-analysis of the benefits of literacy, sorry, the benefits of reading in early childhood for literacy, I might take that huge 50-page PDF that I put together, put that into something, get into Gamma, and start to get it to help me to distill that into a 10-slide pitch on the benefits of early childhood reading. Or I may even take the last prompt that I created, which was around, and we can do this real time so that you can see it again. I may even take this. Okay, we've just created a little mini pitch for our reading company. I'm going to copy that. And actually, I'm going to use that as a basis to create and start my pitch. So we're back in the main screen, but this time instead of generating from one line, I'm pasting in text. I'm pasting in my pitch that I just worked with ChatGPT on. So now I'm starting to use, we started with SciSpace, I've gone into ChatGPT, and I'm now in Gamma. So you can start to see how these tools start to stack and add more and more value as you work with them. I want to summarize this.
We've got a few questions. We've got Adrian asking about referencing authorship. And I think in Gamma, that's something you make sure you add to the cards, isn't it? That's your final editing and tweaking.
Yeah.
We've been asked about whether this tool can be used to generate posters. I immediately think please use Canva, but we're talking about Canva tomorrow. I think Canva's better when it comes to social media images, posters, flyers, all that kind of marketing collateral. Sherry's asked about how secure this is as an app. I think we are back to don't put confidential data into your Gamma prompt. You know, once you've downloaded it locally, and you can download it as a PowerPoint, then you could add any confidential information because that's going to be stored locally. And Les has asked about AI tools for data analysis. Yes, there are. And that's something I don't think we're going to get. We've only got 20 minutes left, so we're not going to cover that massively today. But what tool would you use for data analysis, Blue?
Again, the standard answer is always use what is native to your organization. So
Yeah, because that data is bound to be something you don't want to be going out into the wider LMM
exactly,
resources.
Copilot, most universities have Copilot, and that has quite a useful data analysis tool. And if you have a paid version of Copilot, it can sit across multiple data sets. If you're using something like Excel, Copilot actually can be really powerful if it's used correctly. Most people think it's just a bit like a Google and you ask it questions. It's actually been built so that it can sit across the whole Microsoft Office
It's a great
applications.
tool. I mean, I've used it in the same way I use chat, and I think it's got a good voice, which I know sounds weird, but most people on here have used these tools. I think it's got a good voice. It takes instructions well, so I don't underestimate the power of the tool that you already have in the institution.
Yeah, and Copilot is just built off OpenAI anyway. It's an agreement between Microsoft and
Yeah.
OpenAI. So it slightly lags around the latest models because I think OpenAI use ChatGPT as a bit of a test bed before they then bring it in as an enterprise solution through Microsoft Copilot.
That makes me feel happy because quite often the new version of chat's a bit weird, a bit
I agree.
glitchy, isn't it? Or a bit slow. I've had it where it's just stopped a few times because I know it's done quite a lot of updates over the last few weeks. So that makes me feel happy that it's the kind of more ready to go version.
Yeah, it's the right questions to be asking though, and I would, because of the fact that we're all in higher education institutes, just ask the question to your tech lead within the company, because they'll probably have one that they recommend using.
Yeah.
Brill. So as you can see as well, we can paste in text, and this one looks much better, to be honest, actually. And you can probably see that we've given it a bit more data, and the output looks better. I really like the images on this, actually. It's not too bad. Again, I would go in and add the 20 to 40% of the human element to this. If I am making statements about low literacy levels, more than 1 in 4 children, I want to be referencing that back to the National Literacy Trust. That's the bit where we do need to be adding that level of integrity if it does miss it. But that's a really good question as well. Brill. Did anyone, does this export as a PowerPoint? Yeah, you can export as PowerPoint. You just have to press share. You can actually create little websites with these. I've used that quite a lot. You can share it with people to work on or to just view or add comments. You can export as a PDF, PowerPoint, a Google slide, ping. I haven't tried to post directly to LinkedIn. That's a new one.
Yeah, I've not seen that before. That's what I was just thinking. But yeah, you can put it into whatever tool that you want to use. I mean, quite often I download it for PowerPoint if I've got to use it locally on a laptop. It gives you, and then that's when you can tweak it, fine tune it. But for me, again, I use it as a tool to take it away from the prompt and what I'd like to do. And even if I just say like this, I give it all the information about this is what I need to do, this is who I'm presenting to, blah 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 blah, and it just helps me. Just like you did, Blue. It's like, oh, I know I don't like that, I don't like, but it takes it away from the blank page,
Yeah,
and it helps you
yeah,
understand what you don't want to say and do what. Yeah, I love it for that because
same.
everybody hates opening that blank PowerPoint and maybe putting your brand template on the back and then going, oh, what am I going to say? And images, I've got to go find that image, got to get that signed off, whatever it may be. It just makes it so easy.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I imagine in most cases, and most people in this room, you're at a stage in your career where you've already done a lot of work and actually you've got a lot of knowledge and resources, and it's just about translating those. And these tools are very good at that because we don't actually have to start. It's very rare that you have to start with a blank page. It's actually the tools or the more outdated tools that force us to do that.
And this is brilliant. So this is another angle on Gamma is if you've got a PowerPoint presentation or somebody sent you one and it just needs a bit of, a bit of sparkle. It needs enlightening. It's maybe a bit heavy. It's maybe the formatting. It's like we've all sat through presentations which aren't doing the content justice. Popping
Yeah,
into Gamma can really refresh it.
yeah, agree.
So I've used it quite a lot for that when there's been maybe it's very heavily data, it's very heavy, it's very dry potentially. Pop it in here, get some images, break it down, and suddenly you've got an amazing presentation. And rather than having to work through those maybe 20, 30 slides, you can pop it through here and suddenly it just looks like this. And it's saying all the same stuff, but
Yeah.
make it much easier for your audience to read and experience.
Real. And yeah, let me know if anyone did try that. And
I did actually have
what
the
you thought.
paid version for a while because I found it so useful on a couple of very specific projects. I think Gamma's like £8 a month,
Yeah,
which
it's not
for a
much.
couple of projects that was worth it for me. I've switched it off subsequently, but again, you can turn these things on and off as you need them for a project.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's an element, like most of these tools, there is the free element that you can use until you believe it's adding enough value or saving enough time or giving you that creative value that you're unable to eke out of something like PowerPoint. Brilliant. And just to iterate, like all of these tools, what comes out the first time is a draft, and we must add the human touch, review it, critique it, and add our 20 to 40%, whatever that might be. I'm sure we've all seen the news stories when people put content or information out there without doing that check, and it leads to drastic consequences.
Or just really embarrassing errors.
Yeah.
I saw Dell put a presentation out where basically the E wasn't formatted correctly, and it hadn't, it's like you've just got to see it as an output, but it's not fully formed.
Yeah, agree.
Interesting to see
So,
corporates do it, so don't feel bad if we've all done it. Oh, look, there's a point here.
oh
Yeah, some
wow.
lawyers had their license suspended for this. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's so unbelievable how I think it's a naivety of the outputs of these tools, but it kind of makes me feel better that it's there's some big people doing that reputationally.
Yeah, gosh.
So we won't, because we've been on this course with you, Blue. That's the key thing.
Yeah, I would be very
Use your
cautious with
common
using.
sense. Maybe that's the full narrative. You just have them at the bottom of every slide. Use your common sense, use your intelligence, and use these tools with caution.
Yeah,
Enthusiasm,
cool.
but caution. Maybe that's my balance. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think that's a good framing. All right, grand. So we now know some basic concepts. We've explored some use cases. We've done some examples. So we're going to go slightly deeper. Another case study that I came across recently was researchers using AI to automate systematic reviews, so meta-analysis of their own in-house research of historical records, so saving hours and hours of manual work. That's something that we're exploring at LSE, and I'm keen to push around how do we use our own research that's specific to LSE and start to look at it from a meta perspective, and what themes and patterns and insights can we pull out as a collective base of research, and going and using a more automated, semi-automated approach to that, rather than waiting for serendipity or the chance that a certain academic speaks to another. I think these tools could be very powerful in allowing those types of scenarios to happen.
And like a baby version of this, Blue, is a project that I'm actually working with you on. Is that we did a series of interviews for a program, for a business growth program, and we recorded all of those interviews, and we put those transcripts, none of which have anything confidential within them,
Yeah,
into an LMS, and then we started asking questions of the transcripts around what this cohort really needed from us. So if you're
yeah,
doing research interviews as part of your project, obviously making sure there's nothing in there that's the sensitive data. I found it absolutely brilliant to say, right, we've got a session on AI. What is their confidence levels with AI? How do they talk about their use of AI in those interviews? And it's been brilliant, because it means everybody who's coming and being a part of that program, like Blue, I can give you some information before you get there around the
yeah.
confidence levels of that particular subject in the room. So if you're doing lots and lots of interviews historically, you've got to read them all. You've got to get a sense of it. It's so labor intensive.
Yeah, that's a great use case, and I think we're seeing more and more people do that type of thing with the right safety in place. I think it can
Yes.
be a great way of taking lots and lots of information and making sure you don't allow human error to miss crucial points or certain voices being missed. We're seeing that a lot in sort of community consultation as well.
Adrian, good question. And could you prompt AI to look at the published works of a selection of colleagues and highlight the common themes?
Can't see why not. I would try it.
Yep. And again, if you're not sure, I mean, I said with the quotes on the particular example I mentioned, I said, right, give me that timestamp. Chat said, oh, actually, no, but actually, here are the quotes. Here are the real quotes, and here are the timestamps. So if you challenge it, go back to our lovely intern, the very enthusiastic intern, you go back and go, well, where exactly did you find that? And they'll go, oh, yeah, it's on page 55 over here. You can do the same with chat.
Yeah, and in Adrian's particular example, if it was safe and if it was ethical and you could get an open source copy of that published works, which I'm assuming they are because you said they're published, if you could get them as a PDF and put them into an AI tool like ChatGPT, then it would do a much better job than if you were to just say, please, can you analyze research published by XYZ? Because then you're assuming it's able to search the internet, find the right piece of research, and then assess. If you give it that raw data or information, again, if it's safe and ethical, then that would give you a much stronger output.
Again, just being really specific. Again, back to the intern. If you said to an intern, "Go and look into this thing," but I don't know what you mean. If you any good project prompt, if you write a project brief for a team, you'd make sure there was no ambiguity. You just have to apply the same logic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, funny enough, they work in a very human way, which is a strange thing to say, but that's because that's the way they've been built.
Yep.
Brilliant. Thanks for those questions. Okay, so let's get into a more technical session and let's look at prompt engineering. So like I said, prompt engineering is the way that we tell generative AI or ask it a question. How do we want it to do a certain thing so that we can get the best output? So we've done some of this already. A generic prompt, maybe something like summarize climate change research. We can improve the level of integrity of that question by adding a bit more information, the same way we would ask a question to another person. So summarize the key findings of the research on economic impacts of climate change on low-income countries. So we're giving it more information. I would say these are still both suboptimal prompts, and there is a challenge that a lot of these large language models like ChatGPT are being used like search engines. I think people are starting to change the way that they use them, but it's pretty straightforward that if you move from something like Google or Bing, these search engines that we've been using for the last decade or so, there's going to be an element of learning curve as we move on to different ways of searching terms. So I'm going to give you a framework for that.
Yeah, and we're going to do a bit more on this as well on the 27th of November with Jules from Spark AI. Again, just looking at from a different angle around best practice with prompts. So I think it's good to reiterate this because this is the fundamentals of actually working with these tools really well. Because I think you're right. When I first got it, I'm like, oh, it's just Google with feels like a human on the other end, as you say. But this is the skill set that we all have to not get frustrated.
Yeah, agreed. This is definitely one of the fundamentals. Prompt engineering, really fancy word, simple explanation, the way that we ask questions to these tools. And if we use a PrEP framework, which stands for purpose, role, expectations, and parameters, we're elevating the chance of getting a higher quality output. So in summary, purpose is why are we using it? We might be using it to write a research grant proposal. We may be using it to summarize research. We may be using it to come up with some ideas for translating research into impact, like we would with a junior colleague or an apprentice or an intern or just someone in our team. We need context on the task that you're asking us to do. Even our children, they need context. We would assign a role. So if we give a particular conversation a role, so act like a project manager, act like an entrepreneur, act like a bid writer, a marketeer, this then gives ChatGPT or Cloud or Gemini a bit more information on who they are and what they're expected to deliver. It's very strange, but it works because it has information on what a project manager is and what it does and how it responds and best practice, etc.
I do that every time now because of this. I'll say, you are my social media manager, or you are my editorial manager, or whatever it might be. And it definitely works. As you say, it feels weird, but telling them it's almost like
Yeah.
what hat they're putting on that day.
Yeah, so, well, maybe same for me. I'm sure a few other people in this room might have to do that.
Yeah.
And it's when we were employed by an organization, we have a job role, and within that job role, it's outlined things like expectations and deliverables. So you can start to see how this translates from our world into the digital world, because these models have been trained on the way that our world works. The third element of the prep framework is expectations. So like anything in life, again, if we're even asking a team member, we need to outline our expectations. How long should this grant proposal be? What tone should this pitch be written in? What's the structure of this grant application? We can also tell AI what we want it not to do. So, are there particular words? Are there particular phrases, subject matters, data sources that we do not want them to use? So we can tell it what we do want and what we don't. And this is all clarifying expectations. So we're getting closer and closer to a refined output that meets our needs. And lastly, we have parameters. So these are the rules that we set. These might be specific data points, key messages, constraints, a bit like the question that was answered earlier. Please only use research from the last 5 years, 3 years, 1 year, depending on your need. And it's been said a few times, another fundamental, imagine you are delegating to an intern or a new junior colleague. What might they need to know about this particular task that you're setting them? Brilliant. I'm not going to go through this case study, but this is an
I
example
was
of,
just going to say blue, and also say please.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Chat likes it when you're nice to it, which is a
Yeah,
whole. We'll go down that rabbit hole of psychology. But if you say if you put please on the end, it's been proven they get better responses.
yeah.
Bonkers. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. I queried this recently, actually, and I was pointed to the research paper that proved this.
Yeah.
So it's,
Be nice to your LMM.
yeah, and maybe take that into real life as well.
I mean, it's a good rule, isn't it? Just, be lovely to everybody. But I mean, it goes back to the treating it like the junior member of the team, that the intern is
Mhm.
be nice, be patient. It is. There's a lovely lady called Joyanne who's actually doing tomorrow's session, who has a session she's run for me before called AI as a puppy. And I think such a perfect analogy. It's all enthusiastic and keen, but it's not entirely sure what it's doing.
No, and it's only going to get better, right? This is the worst that these tools are going to be. They're
Yep.
exponentially improving. So
Yeah.
as we learn, they learn, and there's pros and cons with all of that, but we won't get into those topics for today. So the way that I might use this at Talk Club, so we are a charity that has BACP trained therapists provide training to men in their community so that they're able to facilitate effective peer-to-peer talking clubs. So I might use that prep framework to assign a role to ChatGPT as a grant writer. I'm giving it even more specificity around, I want it to have experience in mental health and community engagement. I'm telling it my expectations. I need a 250 word formal and persuasive response to a grant application question. I would always ask ChatGPT per question. I wouldn't ask it to complete a full grant application. That's just too many asks in one go. I'm asking it a question. I'm giving it some background information on Talk Club. I may even link the website and some other integral assets about our company. And I'm asking it to include particular key points around our impact metrics and other elements. So you can see now we've gone from what might be a really, and when I say dumb prompt, I don't mean that in intellectual capability. I just mean that it's very simple and fixed and there's not much to it. Please answer, how does your project involve your community for a grant I'm writing? Great. That's not giving anyone much information. We've now used the prep framework and we have a much more comprehensive question, assigning roles, expectations, parameters, so that we get a great output. Brilliant. We don't have time to do this, but the other exercise I would recommend doing is just go away and trying that. If you are writing a research application or any type of application, go and try to use ChatGPT to do that. Ensure that you use the prep framework and critique the outcome.
I love it for doing the bid writing, because you can put all the documents. You know, if you apply for a grant, there's quite often a whole pile of documents. You can put all of those in there and just work through each block and each box. It's a fabulous tool. Again, for V1, do not submit the thing that gets chucked out of whatever tool you're using, but it definitely helps you explore, especially if you're answering the questions in the way the grant wants you to, which I think is always the game, isn't it? It's, you know what you want to say, but does it actually answer the question? Which I also know, being a grant reviewer, a lot of people don't consider enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great use case with that always that added caveat that you check it, you train it as much data as you can. As your skill level goes up in these tools, you can start to create bespoke grant writing agents or custom GPTs. That might be a session that you want to dig into in the future, where you can train it on your own style of bid writing, your language, so that when someone like Lucy reviews your grant application, it looks pretty unique and not generic like everyone else that's used ChatGPT out of the box.
Yep.
Brilliant. Right, we've got a minute, so I'm just going to do a quick speed shout out on some other tools. If you're interested in this, here are some other tools that align with higher education. I'm not going to read them all, but some of my favorites are, someone asked about transcribing meetings or lectures or interviews. Otter AI is great for that, but again, I would recommend Copilot if you have that. If you want to experiment with building digital products, tools like Replit or Lovable are great. They take a little bit more of technical capability, but if you want to build a digital prototype for something that you might be building, please start with something like Lovable. And in summary, just to avoid some common pitfalls as you go out there and start using these tools, it's not a search engine, so we do need to use prep frameworks when we're prompt engineering, and we always need to critique the outputs and add our human addition. And if you do those three things, you should be all right.
And I'm just putting the form link in the chat. I'm hoping that's works, because I haven't checked it. So let me just check it as well, because that's the form, so you can register your attendance and get your credits, you know, the micro credentials. Yeah, there we go. That does work, that form. So hopefully everyone can see that. Dimitar asked on that one. Thank you, Blue. I'm going to stop the recording. And I just, there's so, I know the time just disappears, doesn't it? There's so much we could be talking about.
Yeah, and I think it just gets bigger every month. So it's where are the practical next steps to add value is a good place to start.